meeting of January 2016. Are there any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Order of business
is as printed in the agenda.
Are there any declarations of interest? Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I wish to declare an interest in item 10E as this issue has been, this application or one similar to it, not materially different, came up before Bonnyrigg and Laswyd Community Council while I was Chair, and I presented a view in public at the time, and that view has not changed, nor, in my opinion, has the application materially. So I'll be removing myself from the room when that takes place.
Okay. If anybody wants to declare an interest during the actual item, you can do that. That takes us on to item 4, minutes of the meeting of the 17th November. Anybody, any comments?
Yeah, that's approved.
Okay then. Yep. This will then take us on to item 5, broadband and the planning report. A report by the Head of Communities and Economy.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report to update the committee on the delivery of high-speed fibre broadband with regard to new development, in particular new housing developments and commercial units. The committee will be familiar with the high-speed broadband rollout programme, which will provide potential coverage across Mid Lothian by 2017. Since April 2015, the planning team has been negotiating with applicants to ensure new developments are compatible for high-speed broadband, and that applicants liaise with digital service providers to ensure high-speed broadband is available at the point of occupation. The report includes conditions which can be used with regard to the grant of planning permission to ensure that the delivery of high-speed broadband. The committee will also note that the conditions are proposed on a number of the reports on today's agenda papers. The proposed Mid Lothian Local Development Plan recognises the importance of digital communications and connectivity and demonstrates support in improving services and delivering infrastructure. The recommendation is to note the update and the template planning conditions.
The purpose of this report is to update the committee on the delivery of high-speed broadband for any future development. Is anyone? Ian?
Thank you, Chair. Two things. Firstly, just to point out that we have a potential issue here with the house building in Hopefield, because Cabinet 56 at the moment is not on anyone's plans for upgrading to fibre, which could mean that if we have a planning condition in place for new houses in that area, which would be connected to Cabinet 56, then the developer cannot possibly guarantee that superfast broadband will be supplied to those houses, because it will be out with their control. So I'd like to know how we deal with that one. But secondly, there seems to be a bit of confusion over what we mean by high-speed fibre broadband. Whenever I've spoken about it in the past, particularly with a view to including conditions on planning, I've been talking about fibre to the premises, not fibre to the cabinet, which could be implied by what's in this document. It's very easy for a developer to say, yes, we'll make sure that there's super fast broadband, because they can just continue to install copper cabling from the cabinet to the premises. And it means then that the householder would be left behind, either if the cabinet is not upgraded, or even when it is, because it means then they're only getting 35, 40 megabits per second compared to about 300 with fibre to the premises, which one day may be the norm. When you look at how technology is moving on, when we all bought computers, we thought it would be ample for what we needed. So fibre to the premises, I think, is what we should be leaning on, at least our developers, to install, rather than just simply saying high-speed fibre broadband. I'd like to know what the official's view is on that.
I'll come back to you in a minute, Peter. I'll ask Peter Arnsdorf to answer those two quite important questions.
Yeah, Chairman, I mean, the conditions are, I think, drafted in a way which put the onus on the applicant, the developer, whether it's house builders or those building commercial units, to demonstrate to the planning authority how they deliver that high-speed broadband. I appreciate there's different speeds depending on whether it's copper or fibre optic from the premises to the actual green box, for want of a better term. But I think it's just pushing it back to the developer to secure that. I also understand that actually laying the cable in terms of copper or fibre optic, actually there isn't a sort of necessarily a cost differential. So as long as the green box is in situ, then the feedback I'm getting from the development industry is they don't mind doing that if they can do that with the agreement of the supplier or the provider. So that's actually the challenge, is getting to get the provider to connect up with the development industry to do that. But yeah, but I think those conditions aim to deliver that.
Ian?
So, yeah, just to clarify, I spoke with BT, and it's BT who would install the infrastructure, and they were happy, provided that the developer was building at least 25 houses, they were happy to install fibre to the premises for the same price as it would have cost the developer for copper. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It's a case of pointing this out and making sure, what I'm really expecting is that we impress this upon the developers and make sure that they understand that, and that they're not just thinking, well, I don't really fully understand it, or we'll just go with whatever we think. If they understand that they're going to be able to get fibre to the premises for the same cost, then that will make the saleability of their houses that much better, and they need to understand that. But thank you for your answer.
I think, Chairman, from the development industry's point of view, they probably would agree with that. It helps them sell the house. It's good for them. It's certainly good for businesses if you're doing it for new commercial units. It's just getting the partners to agree that the timing and the phasing and the delivery of it.
Peter?
I'm very grateful to Councillor Baxter to have raised point 32. I also have great misgivings. We hear these figures of 98%. And when you then talk to the people that are in the industry, they are nowhere near 98%. It is a complete fib. And I really do take exception that we are getting these figures and are made to believe that that is what's going to be achieved. When we had our meeting with the farmers that you, Chairman, were also present at, we heard the experts explain how BT Openreach is nowhere near even the figure of 78% that they are quoting today.
Derek?
Yeah, Jimmy, thank you. Ian raises the same point I think I raised at the last meeting, and it's about the exact wording of this, what we're asking for here. I think we should be really clear here. We're looking for the most up-to-date solution to telecommunications, broadband, computer use and data flow. Every year the word changes, the up-to-date system moves, and it's to make sure that this, whatever policy we put in place, is more fluent, to allow officers to ask for the most up-to-date system to be installed in the houses. And it's just to make sure that wording is as such that it doesn't tie us down to, we've says fibre optic or to the cabinet. We leave it so as it flows to the most up-to-date systems to allow an attractive area to come and to attract small business users and stuff like that. So if we can just make sure that wording's as such, I think it would maybe alleviate some of the concerns that Ian has.
I'll take that on board, Chairman. Yeah.
Jim?
Frankly, I would prefer that we actually were quite clear on this. I would rather that we actually talked about to the premises, because while Councillor Baxter makes a valid point in terms of the discussions he's had with BT, it isn't necessarily always going to be the case that the cost is the same, because BT might see an opportunity here to charge more for the fibre to the premises than they're currently charging. And that's the important thing. So I think, I'd be more comfortable if we were very specific in that. Irrespective, I take on board what Councillor Milligan says. Things in this area are changing all the time. New technologies become available. Not to be too prescriptive in terms of that, but certainly going right up to the premises, I think, is vital.
I'm thinking of a house builder wants to build some houses and BT have not put a cabinet in. Where are we in that situation? And they don't want to put a cabinet in, it's too far or whatever.
Well, the conditions are drafted insofar as that the developers, in your terms, are the house builders, it's the onus is on them to secure the delivery of that. It's like, I presume, putting in connections to sewerage, connections to water supply. It's just seeing it as part of the normal development process and getting those partners to speak to each other. I would suggest the development industry have been very successful in seeing that through in terms of the water industry and there's other utilities, so this is just adding on to that.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just to come in and follow up what Councillor De Vink said, and I mean, I still don't believe the figures of 78% of Midlothian households enjoy high-speed broadband. I just don't think that stands up to public scrutiny. And that's the difficulty. I mean, what we're trying to do, and I agree with the report, is and make it as tight as we possibly can for new development. The difficulty we've got all along the way is that there are going to be people in new developments sitting there with high-speed broadband, and the person next door who happens to be in an existing development doesn't actually enjoy that high-speed broadband. Now, I know as a council we've put money in, I know the Scottish Government have put money in, I know BT have got the contract and are doing well out of it, but I think it's like a snail's pace. It really is, and I don't actually accept the 78%. I don't know where the officers got the figures from, and I'm not so sure we'll reach 98% by 2017 either. I mean, I happen to know a few years ago when we decided that we would redo the road in Rosalind Glen because it kind of slipped away a little bit. And we approached BT at that time because we were actually doing the roads as a council, and we approached BT at that time and said to them, here's an opportunity to lay a fibre optic cable up the Rosalind Glen. So a lot of people in Rosewell that don't enjoy broadband, and I say it, you know, you go to patches of Rosewell at this moment in time, and it's hit and miss of whether you get a signal or not. And these people still don't enjoy that. Now, we're going to have new housing going up there, Chairman, and in other parts of Midlothian, where people will get high-speed broadband, and the person next door in the existing houses won't do that. And I really do think, great that we're going to have a policy within the local plan for new development, but hey-ho, there's a heck of a long way to go in getting high-speed broadband to the existing parts of Midlothian that don't enjoy it at the moment.
Well, is the meeting in generally happy with the paper? Yes?
Chair, just to clarify, as I understand it, members have noted the draft template conditions. I've got a clear understanding that they wish to see that beefed up in reference to the premises, and that the officers would have the normal delegated powers to ensure that the conditions applied to applications reflect the progress in technologies that are made over time.
We'll now move on to item 6. Major applications currently being assessed, and other developments at pre-application consultation stage. Report by the Head of Communities and Economy.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report regarding a pre-application consultation regarding proposed residential development at land west of Corby Craig Terrace, Bilston, or Site HS16 in the proposed Midlothian Local Development Plan. The purpose of this report is to afford members the opportunity to make comment on the proposals at this early stage of the planning process, in line with the guidance reported to committee in May and October 2014. The applicants are to engage in a public consultation exercise towards the end of January, the beginning of February. This will include a public event which will be advertised. As the site is not allocated in the adopted local plan, but is proposed in the Midlothian Local Development Plan, the applicants wish to engage in early pre-app discussions so that once the proposed plan is adopted, and on the basis that the site is retained in the plan, a detailed plan application can be submitted shortly thereafter. The report outlines a provisional planning consideration with regard to the adopted local plan. However, it is worth noting that this consideration is based on the indicative information available at present. A detailed assessment of any proposal will be made once a plan application is forthcoming. It is recommended that the committee notes the provisional planning provision set out in the report, that any comments made by members will form part of the minute of the committee meeting, and the expression of a provisional view does not fetter the committee in its consideration of any subsequent formal plan application. Sorry, Chair, I've just realised I've jumped 2 items. I do apologise. I shall jump back to item 6. Sorry, Chairman. I do apologise. To go back to the major applications report, that's the report, the regular update you receive on major applications, which is for noting, unless there's any questions or comments you wish to make or ask. Chairman.
Alec first.
Just a question, Peter, just for clarification. The application by Carla Holmes for the site at Newton Farm and Wellington Farm, Oakley, Cord Road, Motherhill, Dalkey. Now I see there's no been an application received yet. Now I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that there could be a problem with Travel Scotland, because part of the plan for that site was to put in a park and ride and link up the road with the A68. Is there a problem with Travel Scotland? Transport Scotland, sorry.
Yeah, Chairman, if I could refer you back to November's committee where I gave a brief update about the local plan process, and in that report I made reference to giving some workshop briefings to members at the end of January, beginning of February in terms of the local plan process. One of the things I will be mentioning to members there is that yes, Transport Scotland have made a representation in terms of the proposed local plan, and one of the issues they've mentioned is concern about that site and that access arrangement. So that is true based on what you're saying, Councillor.
Peter, I would never ask the question if I had been at the meeting in November, but I wasn't there.
Margot.
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding the land at Salters Park and Dalkeith, note that no applications yet received, and the pre-application report was reported in January last year. But I remember all the representation that was being made to local members and obviously to other members to get this into a mixed-use development, because previously it had only been allocated for industrial use. Yet we're sitting here in January 2016 and nothing happening. I just wondered, what is the issue?
The issue is that the applicants, site owners, have decided to wait to see the outcome of the local plan process, insofar as that they've made representations that, as you say, that the site should be a mixed-use site, which includes housing in effect, rather than just an economic land allocation, as part of the site is currently, and the rest of the site is to be added as part of the proposed plan. So they've made representations and are looking to follow that process through.
Jamie, thank you. Ian, I'm on 3.2 in this paper. On 3.1, we're talking about the Midlothian Local Development Plan, and in 3.2 we're talking about, in the interest of fairness and transparency, that you're not talking about bringing up any sites that have been identified in the future Midlothian Development Plan. Given, and the next papers where we see the reporters unit having came in and granted consent and saying the local development 5-year land supply isn't up to date as one of the main reasons of granting consent, are you still of that mind that these will only be reported here? Because quite frankly, I'm kind of scared that then what happens is the people who submitted these, and I keep in mind there are several applications in later on that are being reported here that are in the Midlothian Local Development Plan, are in the Midlothian Development Plan, some for recommended for granted consent, some for recommended to reject. Given the fact that we now have a reporter's decision granting consent, I think it was in Lashwade Road, Ness Bank, against what you're saying here, are you still seriously saying that you're not going to bring them here, therefore they'll run out of time, and under the deemed refusal or no having dealt with them, they can appeal straight to the reporters unit? Are you still suggesting that that's the route you'll take?
Chair, the situation is that where a site is allocated in the plan and is yet to go through its examination in public, we would expect the landowners, developers, those that are interested in developing the site, to allow the process of the local plan to complete. And indeed, that's what the Scottish Government guidance is all about. It is the case, though, that it's the right of those developers to make a planning application as and when they wish, and some, as you'll see, will do that in advance of the completion of the local plan process. The policy position we take, therefore, is that although they may apply for planning permission, we would not determine that that application either under delegated powers or by reporting to committee prior to the local plan process running its course. Some applicants are sometimes happy just to leave their application sitting on the books and allow the local plan process to complete. Others require and ask that the application be determined, and in those instances we would normally then bring the report to committee, in most cases because of the size of the development, to committee for decision, and there is an application later on your agenda which is precisely that. In terms of turning to the decision, and I know it's perhaps drifting in, Chair, to the next item, but seems I've been asked the question, the decision of the reporter on the site nearby in relation to where he cites land supply as inadequate, have to say we take issue with that, and it's our intention to respond to that decision and to write to the reporter's unit in respect of the 5-year land supply issue. We consider we do have a 5-year land supply. That's something which probably best for members to consider as part of the local plan seminars which will be coming up in due course. It's also the case that it's not unusual for a reporter on a particular case to take a view in relation to such things as land supply. What often the reporters unit will say when asked is that relates to that case and that reporter's view. Whilst developers might wish to try and take comfort from that, it doesn't necessarily follow that that reporter has set a position which is then applicable across the board in all other similar applications. So in short, we wouldn't normally report applications up which are premature. We will if the applicants insist upon it. And at present time, our view is that we do have a 5-year land supply, and we regard while we respect obviously the decision of the reporter on that recent case, we don't accept that that's a template and a basis for others to come forward and use it as a basis for early release of land.
But Councillor Milligan was saying that, is this a way of going straight to the reporter?
Well, all that would happen is that you get an instance whereby if a developer wishes to push a site particularly hard and does not wish to see the conclusion of the local plan process, then they have that option under the rules that within a certain period of time they could appeal non-determined of the application to the reporter's unit. That's quite normal fare.
Jamie, and that's exactly what happened here. The applicant applied under non-determination rules and the reporter has granted consent. And whilst Ian's saying that that each application should be taken its merit, and Scottish Government's guidelines is that we should go through the Midlothian local plan. The Midlothian local plan is quite well out of date. It's supposed to have been done by now. It's fell away quite a bit. And the reality is we have a judgment that I would think each and every developer will look at and think, well, is that a judgment that can be applied to my site? And having read the judgment, I would suspect that there's a good chance that there will be several of them that will think, well, I'm going to come forward with that ruling here. And it's just whether, in my view, it would be better, even if the recommendations are to wait till it finishes, that we make sure that we didn't end up with everybody who's got a non-determination timescale going straight to the reporters and taking out this committee's hands. I would rather it came here. However, I'll bow Ian's superior knowledge on this, and if he thinks it's best to go down this line, I'm quite happy with his recommendations.
Russell.
Yeah, Chairman, I never raised this 2 planning committee meetings ago because I could see after discussion with the officers the merit in just the hang fire approach. The difficulty is that a reporter has now determined an application which is out with our control. Now, whether it be a non-determination or indeed on some of the applications up here today that aren't in the local plan, may I hasten to add, the current one of 2008, and bearing in mind the local plan is supposed to be 5 years. That's what it's supposed to last, and the difficulty is we're now into 2016, so we're sliding as we go. Now we we can raise all the reasons why that has happened. But nevertheless, we are where we are. Now, it used to be, in past days, when you got to the end of the existing local plan and you were considering a new local plan and issues of sites being released, etc., that were in the draft local plan, that then became what one calls a material consideration and determination. And our difficulty is of trying to hold back the tide at the moment is that all the applicants could decide to go by non-determination. And some of them have held off, may I hasten to add, Chairman, that are actually in the ones that are reported in the major applications report today. Some of them have held back on that. But they're going to be looking very, very hard to think, well, would I be better going to appeal and take my chance there, bearing in mind some of those sites are in the draft local plan, and get permission? Now, the difficulty about that, and we've seen it with our neighbours in Edinburgh, is they've lost control of the whole thing. It's actually unbelievable now what's happening in Edinburgh, that they're actually trying to catch up with a number of applications that are now gone through on appeal. And the difficulty I have, Chairman, is how sustainable is it for us between now and getting a local plan back to this committee to get put into the Scottish Government so that a reporter can be looking at our particular findings across the whole area. And I really do feel uneasy in that we start to lose that control. Now, I was pleased to see that in the Last Wade Road one, actually the reporter has seen fit to give it back to the planning authority to determine some of the conditions, etc. And there's certain things that have to be carried out. But the difficulty I have is there's some up here today where they're not in the local plan, but they're in the new draft local plan that are seen by officers to be recommended for approval. And later on in the agenda, there's another one where it's recommended for refusal. Now, I can't understand for the life of me, and we're going to come on to it, but I can't understand for the life of me why one's premature and one's okay. And that's what I'm saying. We've either got to give a clear message to everybody, and there's some down in the South East Wedge, for example, at Shawfair, where the applicant came forward and has been told to hang fire. Very unhappy they're going to hang fire, but if they see that one in Last Wade Road determined by a reporter, it may be that they come in and go for a non-determination, and we then lose that kind of control. And that's all I'm worried about, Chairman, and I would like the officers to kind of reassure the committee that we're in a good place, because I don't feel very comfortable at the moment.
Well, what we have is a existing Midlothian local plan from December 2008, and if you look at the way in which the committee has taken forward that plan, the housing allocations and indeed the other development allocations have come forward broadly in accordance with that plan. The reason for the delays we needn't go into in too greater detail, but it relates to the development plan programmes for strategic and local development plans. The existing, or the new local plan is at a particularly advanced stage with a timetable for completion by the end of this calendar year, all being well. In a sense, without maybe labouring this too much, to some extent, if a developer is intent on taking forward a site as quickly as possible, then they may go one of two routes. They'll either go a route that says to the council, you determine this application, and if you don't give me an approval, I'm going to appeal. Or if you don't do anything, I'm going to appeal anyway. So we arrive at the same place, whatever, to some extent, unless the committee take a view that they wish to grant applications in advance of the matter being discussed with all the representatives at the local plan inquiry. That's a separate matter. In relation to the matters that would come before either this committee or a reporter in looking at a case, it'll be the same. It'll be the development plan position and also specifically the land supply. And the land supply, because it's particularly referred to in the approved strategic development plan. Our position is that, from an officer point of view, we consider there is a 5-year land supply in Midlothian. and that we would be able to convince reporters of that case. Now, whether that would be the case or not, I don't know, but I think we're in a different position to Edinburgh, although I can't comment on the Edinburgh situation. But in terms of the amount of land that's coming forward, the amount of land that's readily available for development over the next 5 years, we consider the numbers are there. To some extent, Chair, this will come out in the wash in relation to how these applications come forward, whether they come forward through to this committee because there's an insistence on the part of the developers to do so. Equally, if the committee wishes us to bring these applications which we're holding before you, I'm more than happy to do that, and we can report up on that. But in doing so, I think we'd inevitably have to focus on what's the development plan position as it stands in relation to the adopted and an approved development plan position, which is the 2008 local plan and the 2013 strategic plan, and what is the land supply position.
Ian, before I come to you, this local plan will not be agreed until December this year. So how does that leave us then for the remainder of this year with people wanting applications to go through?
Well, it means that if we hold applications in relation to sites which are going to be the subject of debate at the local plan inquiry, and applicants are content to do that, those will simply sit on the stocks whilst that process goes through. If the applicants choose to take these applications forward in advance of that process, then they've got two routes. They can either insist that we determine the application, and again, it's your decision whether you do or not, but we bring that to committee, or they can appeal non-determination, because many of them are in that position where they're able to do that.
Yes, Chairman, I was just going to add to what Ian was saying in regard that the relevant appeal decision, which has been referenced, it sort of referenced back to the 2014 housing land audit, which was figures based from April 2014. Now, since that time, this council has issued permissions such as Shawfair. There's been developments at Rosewell which have been granted permission. There's been further developments at Gold Bridge. So since the figures that the reporter has used, there's actually been sites opened up, which has increased the council's land supply.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a bit confused. Or I was confused, but I think Ian might have reassured me, because the inference was made earlier on that these decisions were being taken out of our hands and determined by the reporter purely by virtue of the fact they were not being determined by this council, and that was as a result of the fact that the local plan was changing and sites which were not to be developed will be. But my understanding, if you can clarify this for me, Ian, is that if there's a site which is in the current local plan not for development, but in the local development plan, the proposed one, it is for development, then the developer has a choice either to sit on it and wait, and then have a much more likely chance of having it passed when the new plan in 12 months' time or whatever comes into force, or they can ask us to determine it. Now, then, if we determine it, then the planning officials presumably would recommend refusal because it's premature, presumably. But in the case of the Last Wade Road one, why was that not determined? Because if it were going to be presented by the developers, then we would have determined it. So the only reason it would go to the reporter is if we do not determine it, but we would have done. So how was that one, for example, taken out of our hands?
I don't know about that particular case, and Peter can comment. All I would say is that the applicants don't need to give any notice that they're going to appeal non-determination. They can just choose to do so. And often it may be the case that applicants will think colloquially, I don't think I've got much chance of just taking it through the authority. I think I'll just try my chances and go straight to the reporters on the basis of non-determination.
I was just going to add that you often find that if developers submit a plan and application and we'll just use the phrase prematurely, then they're wanting to negotiate and secure some of the detail in advance of the plan being the next plan being adopted. So the applications come in and we start work on them. We don't just shelve them. We do start work on them and discuss them with the developers, rather than just bringing them up and recommending refusal. So that's the normal approach to it. In this case, it got to a point where the negotiations concluded and the developer just wanted to go off and appeal. But yes, later on the agenda, for example, you have an application which, the developers said, well, I would like a decision, please. So that's why it's come to you.
Yeah, so Ian, you're saying there that you're confident that the council can defend its land supply position, yet the reporter has found against us on that planning application that we've discussed. As far as I understand, the only option that we've then got is to seek a judicial review on this. Is that the intention?
Chair, we've looked into this. For judicial review, I'm not a lawyer, but we've got to demonstrate that the reporter has acted in a way which he couldn't have acted on in any reasonable terms. What the reporter's done is taken a particular view of the policy position and the information that was before him, and therefore has reached a decision which I don't think is challengeable through the courts. But it's not unusual for a planning authority to write to the reporter's unit and to have an exchange of correspondence, which sometimes can be helpful in relation to identifying the specifics of a particular case and why a reporter reached a particular conclusion. So that's not unusual, and we're intending to do that in this case. But as Peter Ransdorf has mentioned, we've actually moved on in terms of the figures since the 2014 position, which that reporter was basing his assessment on, and I think we've moved to a much better position. So anybody coming now and arguing on a fresh appeal, well, look what that reporter said, our position would be, no, there's new information, there's new figures, there's been new consents granted. It's a different situation. You need to look at the new figures.
Lisa.
Thanks, Convener. If I may ask the idiot question, what are the ramifications, to use Peter's phrase, if the premature application in advance of the conclusion of the determination of the local plan, if an application was brought before us that referred to that and we approved it, what are the ramifications for the deliberations and conclusion of the local plan? Are there any where there might be a conflict between that outcome or the deliberations towards it? Are there legal consequences for us? Or where would we stand on that? Where there was a conflict between the ultimate conclusion and our having approved an application?
In terms of legal ramifications, probably need advice from lawyers. But in terms of the planning legislation, the planning authority, when having received a planning application, is required to determine it. Well, if it chooses not to, it gets taken. But so that in it's that's a straightforward process under the Act. A planning application duly made, duly determined by the authority. In making its determination, the authority shall have regard to the current development plan and material considerations, which could include the new local development plan. Speaking hypothetically, the council could reach a view that says that although this is a site that's yet to come forward through the local plan process, it considers that the merits of the case overall are such that it would wish to grant the planning consent. Now, to take an example, you could have a situation in which a site is allocated in the proposed plan, but in fact there are no objections, or there are few comments, but there may be the comments that can be accommodated. Something like say, well, we need to keep room for a footpath. There needs to be plenty of affordable housing. Those that could be accommodated. You might take a view as an authority. Well, on that basis, there's no need to hold this site up. We can take it forward. The only issue is where you have a site which has been the subject of quite a lot of comment and objection in the local plan, then by granting a planning consent on the site, it clearly means that when the matter is discussed and looked at by the reporter, he or she will have that knowledge that, in fact, there's actually a planning consent being granted. And if that planning consent has been implemented with any sort of start, then that's a secure position for the developer. And therefore, the issue of the principle of development on that site and other issues will have passed, and that could no longer be an issue for discussion at the inquiry.
Adam.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I don't know about the rest of the committee, but I'm no confused with this, but what I don't understand is how you, as somebody that's a committee member, would actually see two similar applications coming in, and one's actually getting approval or recommended for approval and the other one isn't. And I think the danger here today, whatever we actually do, I think there'll be a pile of these coming in after this committee meeting today, because I think I think we really need to be very, very clear how we actually handle this today. And I just, for the life of me, I cannot understand why one's okay and one isn't, and that's really specifics for later on in this agenda of the day. I just really don't understand that. They're both in the development plan, and there'll be other ones that are actually in a similar position, and there'll be people, developers, actually sitting watching this decisions we make today very, very carefully.
I don't know how to progress with this now, because as I understand it, until the local plan is approved in December and there are no objections, an application might be okay. But if there are objections, then we refuse it. Is that the correct understanding?
No, Chair. There's a number of major applications sitting in the system, which the update table shows is that we've identified them as premature, but also in the text, if the members wish us to bring them forward and make a recommendation on it, then obviously we can seek to do that. We were just outlining the position in terms of the local plan process. Obviously, the planning system is supposed to be based on a plan-led system, and I suppose as an officer, the appropriate process is to have sites identified through the development plan process and then come into the committee via planning applications. But if the members wish to see these brought to committee, then we should bring them to committee.
Yeah, Jimmy, no, I didn't think members are suggesting that now. I think what we are concerned about is the fact is that if officers are concerned that there will be a non-determination, a plan appeal, and as you pointed out, a developer doesn't need to tell you he's not happy, he sticks the plan application in. When the time runs out, if you've not determined that, it can go straight to appeal. But I think where there are areas where we feel they will go to an appeal, I think it would be better to come here, but I would leave that delegated to the officers to decide. It was just to ask Ian, really, and light of the decision by the reporter, and I'm kind of even more confused. We could probably go around in circles here for a while, because the reasons given for us to be able to more robustly defend that are, for example, chauffeurs being brought into site. Now, that's dated the 15th of December. We had allocated chauffeur long before that, so I could spend all day here asking questions as to how you think we've now got a better argument, because there's nothing been granted since the date of that appeal coming through, which was on the 15th of December, so there's nothing changed. However, I'm quite happy to take that offline, but I'm just saying, in areas where senior planning officers feel that it's slightly, if it's not determined, this paper here says is we will normally not bring them to committee. I would suggest in areas where we think they're going to go to an appeal, that they should be brought to this committee.
Chair, I just wondering if it would be helpful if I and the team could do two things here. One, to prepare information by way of a briefing in relation to the 5-year land supply, and also to check with applicants and agents in relation to those applications which are currently seen as premature, and maybe to brief members in relation to those aspects, so that there's a full understanding of where we are with this, and so members can come to a conclusion about how they feel is the best way forward.
Is the committee happy with what Ian said, and also do we accept the recommendations at 4.1?
So, Chair, can I just ask then, in terms of the two applications that are in today that could be considered as premature, where does that place them in terms of the agenda for what you just said?
Well, Well, because in the case of the one at the one at the end of the agenda in relation to Lasswade Road, that or Bonneville Road, that is where the applicant has clearly said we would like a determination of its application. So that's brought before the committee. Now, it's a matter for you when we get to that item as to how you want to handle it as a committee and what decision you want to make. But in relation, so in terms of that one, it's quite clear. I'm thinking about applications where we just need to understand what the current thinking of the applicant is, because if there's concern that there's a feeling that they're going to wish to go to non-determination and yet we're not being made aware of that at this stage, then at least we can update members fully on that.
Well, we are going to have briefings, remember, but things might be clearer then.
But if I have the briefing, where does that place the two items in the agenda of the day? That's the question I'm asking.
But we're going to debate them separately, I understand. Yeah.
Well, those items, in my view, were quite clear that those are items that can come up today because of the applicant's view that they wish to see them determined. I don't think that changes in terms of whatever briefing. If applicants are saying to us, we would like our application to come before committee, that's a straightforward request and one we would normally accede to. So it doesn't change in relation to these two applications today on the agenda, which we're recommending you should determine.
Is the committee happy with that explanation? Yeah. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 7, appeals and local review body decisions.
Thank you, Chair. This is the regular update on the local review body decisions, and there's 4 appeal decisions referenced in the report, one of which has been discussed, but if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them.
Committee happy to take the recommendation? Item 8, pre-application consultations, report by Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll just repeat this. Okay, cut it short and just advise the members that this is one of the regular pre-application consultation reports that you receive on new sites that are coming forward, and it's just to pre-warn members that it's in the system and to give you the opportunity to make early comment if you wish to do so.
So this is the application for the infilling of the Limeworks quarry.
Judge, it's an pre-application report which we do now. It's to give members any opportunity, if they wish, to highlight any particular planning issues which they think are relevant in the consideration of the application, because that would be helpful in 2 ways. One, it allows members in this forum to be able to give an indication of issues which they think are of note. It also allows the applicants to hear that and to consider them in relation to how they take forward any planning application that they may wish to then submit formally.
Happy to accept the recommendations?
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for engineering works comprising the infilling of quarry number 1 at the former Middleton Limeworks. This application was deferred from the November 2015 committee meeting to enable a site visit to take place. The committee site visit took place yesterday, the 11th of January 2016. Issues raised by members on the site visit relate to the number of anticipated vehicular movements and the capacity of the local road infrastructure to accommodate the increased activity. The proposal comprises infilling a disused quarry using inert material. Material will be imported over a 6-year period to infill 660,000 cubic metre void. The infilling will be sculpted to tie the works into the surrounding landform and to return the land to the countryside uses. The final restoration will take up to a further 12 months following the cessation of the infilling process. The site is accessed off an unnamed road which connects to Goody House Road, which in turn joins the A7. Approximately 33 heavy goods vehicles will enter and exit the site each working day. However, this is an approximation and that number will increase during peak demand. The applicant is proposing to use the existing access point, weighbridge, internal haul route and site office associated with the previous quarrying use. To mitigate mud being deposited on the road from vehicles leaving the site, it is proposed to surface a section of the internal road and install a wheel wash facility. Furthermore, since drafting the report, further discussion have taken place with transportation colleagues with regard concern over the potential for mud on the road, and it is also considered appropriate to require a road sweeper to be retained on the site during the operation of the site to ensure that any debris pulled onto the highway is cleaned up quickly. Proposed condition 16 can be amended to reflect this position. The development site is within the countryside where there is a presumption against development unless it is in support of an identified rural activity. However, in supporting the previous quarrying use, the council accepts that the cessation of operations the site should be restored. The proposed infilling is one which will result in the restoration of the site. It is also worth noting that the applicant has been infilling quarry number 2 at Middleton Limeworks following the issuing of a breach of condition notice in December 2012. The proposed application in effect continues this operation taking place but on a wider site with enhanced controls. There have been consultation responses from a number of interested bodies including SEPA, SNH and Transport Scotland. There have been 7 representations and the Morfoot Community Council object to the application. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions.
Yeah, Jim, we attended the site visit yesterday and I wasn't sure why we were going there, but when I got there it probably helped me understand the application a bit better. I've got to say I'll be supporting the recommendations that are here in front of us. We heard quite a lot in the discussion while we were there about maybe passing places needed, a road needed widening and all that. I have to say, when you want to compare it, for example, to the area Dalhousie Business Park, I would say the roads are a lot narrower and a lot worse there, and we've heard the kind of same arguments in the areas, and yet we've had absolutely no problems whatsoever with the amount of trucks running out of there, for example, for Viridor, that have gone in and out there. So I can't see anything that needs done to the road. And I do understand with the amount of lorries that are going to be on it, that we might want to watch if there's any deterioration. However, it was really noticeable that there's also other works there that have a lot of heavy goods lorries that are going on and off it. So it's just to make sure that any conditions put on didn't hit the one or the last guy in that gets the blame for everything. I don't think there's a requirement for roads and that. What I would say is that the suggestions that were talked about, for example, like a forum, a local forum or stuff like that, would I think would be helpful. But again, I'd point out that something that we put in for the sand quarry that went into Rosewell, I think there was about 2 meetings, and once everybody was happy, it sort of dissolved away, and I think it sort of it helps. And I know there's concern to make sure that the area is fully reinstated, so that would be beneficial. However, I'm going to say I didn't see this being exceptional. I think it was described yesterday as an absolute no-brainer, that it would restore a visually unpleasant site. It would bring back into use a disused quarry. Some of the health and safety stuff, when we went down and visited, you can see the clear drop and where the water tabling would be, and you can see if you look across likes of the pond and in other areas, this would take away a major health and safety risk, and I would think this would bring the area back into reasonable use. I'll certainly be supporting this, and I think anybody that's fair that was there yesterday would be doing the same.
So you want a condition of this forum to be set up?
I'll let I think there's local members got ideas that were spoken about yesterday. I'll leave them. Sorry, I maybe superseded that.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I didn't have an objection to this in principle. I do support the infilling of the quarry. I think a number of issues have been raised by a number of parties, including the local community council, legitimate concerns based on experiences that they've had over the years with that quarry being in operation there, and the work that's been going on more recently. And I think in the conditions that have been put forward by the officers here, I think they meet most of the concerns that have been raised by the objectors, and in particular the good bit of work that's been done by the community council here. When we touched on this before we decided to go to a site visit at the last meeting, it was suggested, I think, the officers that the council wouldn't want to be involved in a liaison committee, if you like. But I think it would be important, providing members agree, that this committee makes it quite clear to the applicant, who, according to the community council, has made a commitment at the pre-application stage to establish a community liaison group, is to actually emphasise to them that we as a planning committee think that that would be something that we would want them to do. Because I think, for not just for the interests of the residents, the people that live near the site, for their own interests as well, that it's much easier when you've got a committee that you can go to, you can raise concerns, and the operator of the site has the opportunity to address the concerns before they snowball into something a lot more significant. So I think I take on board what was said. It may be the case that we cannot insist on that, I think we should make it clear to the applicant that we would hope that that would be something that they would be prepared to take on board.
Brian?
Yeah, you mentioned Ian when he said that the Moorfoot Community Council objected, but they've never objected. They've raised various concerns. And when you look at 5.7, you can see the legitimacy for the concerns. If you know the history of the area, you'll know how much a mud bath that area can become, and can deteriorate quite quickly into those kind of dangerous, shall I say, probably conditions of a mud bath. It's not always just been for the quarry itself, because you see the other businesses in the area, including the farming industry. But you understand how it's an area that can really deteriorate pretty quickly, and that the highways implications that we've put onto this, I think, are right, and the wheel wash and and the number of traffic movements that's involved in this, although very much subject to the commercials operations there. Yes, we can see how it's very necessary to have those robust conditions in there on the wheel wash agenda, and the large runoff on the particular on site before it goes onto highway. Knowing the area in the past, we also know that we've had completion dates that have come and gone. Completion dates, extensions come and gone. Without any sort of discipline to please comply with this completion date, and obviously a lot of things were vacancies in the marketplace at the time, and the quarry and the new owners have now moved on with a lot more different commercial agendas. But it's not about commercial agendas that we're making our recommendations. The recommendations that we are making today is to protect the landscape in this area, and to restore the landscape to arable use, normal countryside use. And I think that one of the ways of ensuring that many of these conditions are implemented is to have a robust bond. This bond shouldn't be detrimental to the commercial interests, and it wouldn't be a bond that should be up front, but it should be a bond that's tapered towards the end of the. So when it comes to the final year to reinstate, then once that's reinstated, then the bond can be freed and returned to the current owners, whoever they may be, because it's got to the bond has got to be, it's not to be failing just because something like Scottish Coal failed in the past, and we've got to learn our lessons of this, that it's got to be a proper banking arrangement so that the money is protected, but it is also coming in on a tapered kind of basis, even on annual increments, so that once we get to the need to actually make good the completion of the site, then we've got an incentive to apply to, because obviously it would be a breach of conditions if it wasn't met, and that bond then could be enough of an incentive to make sure that, and it allays the fears of the community as well, because they've seen end dates come and go many times in the past up here, and if they thought that or knew that there was a robust bond in there that was going to determine and guarantee a completion on our completion date, that the commercial interests were there to do so. I mean, it's a major development. There's a lot of implications here for the area, but their policies have got to be enforceable, not just on paper. We've got to be able to make sure that they're underlined in that kind of basis, so we can go forward there. The number of inert material deliveries going into that site, SEPA or council planning inspection officers, nobody can monitor that. A lot of it's going to be based on the reports and the trust that's going in there. But you know what, the spot checks can get done, and the community liaison group can actually identify issues if they thought there was issues coming in there where it wasn't the particular materials that were wanting there. There's a lot of commercial gains in it, so we say extending maybe the range of inert materials or pushing the boundaries of it. But you know, let's make sure that this is not in there, and that the eyes and the ears locally can get provided with a community liaison group. And I would say, you know, that when we've had a mention before of a willingness to create a community liaison group, we think we should be putting this down in our conditions as well, that we would like to see the community liaison group established, you know, and involve the local community, and actually having eyes and ears on the procedures of that. Everybody's wanting to see this, I think, filled and completed. I didn't realise the depth of that site till you're there, but you know, when you're on the site, you can see the lovely views you get from that area. You know, and it'd be good to return it to normal, you know, countryside use and enjoyable part of our landscape in Midlothian. Thanks.
Well, on paragraph 8.17, there is a bond, and as I understand from Councillor Muirhead, he wants a community liaison, but not a condition. He's asking the contractor to do that. Am I correct in that assumption?
I think we're wanting the bond robust as possible, you know, and that's the kind of words I'm proposing, you know, as robust as strong as possible to offer an incentive, and we're wanting the community liaison group to be established, and we want that to be put into our policy here today, that we would like to see that community liaison group established, and we would obviously refer it back to the developer for the actual pros and cons of it. We're not going to be the secretariat for such a thing. You know, it's not a council role, but we want to put it through the council planning that it is deemed necessary for this particular development.
You don't want to leave it as Councillor Muirhead said, though? Yes or no? Yeah, okay.
Prior to quarrying operations began, this was proper countryside use, and it was arable land, and I believe it should be restored to arable land, and it should be kept like that. It still is in the countryside, and that's why I believe that should be. And it says in 5.1 that it involves reinstatement of land close to the original ground topography with 1 to 2 metres or. So I think we should still have it as arable land. I don't think it's right. It should be leisure land. What if people want to have allotments there in the future? Will the food that's grown there be suitable for eating? Yes or no? There's countryside land to me. It should remain so.
You want to make that a condition, yeah? Peter?
Chairman, just to come back on that point, yeah, the end use will be predominantly in an agricultural use. It's just made reference to there will be informal paths so that people can walk through it and use it. So there will be some grazing, there'll be some trees planted and informal walkways on it. So some of it will be arable as such in terms of pasture. Just to let you know, as an aside, you don't technically need planning permission to return land back to agriculture, so that's maybe why it's not referenced so much in the text, because you don't need planning permission for that. But the reference to the leisure use is because there will be informal pathways through the site. But don't forget, in terms of the quality of the soil, it's supposed to be inert material, so that's material that doesn't give off pollutants. And then there'll be a sort of 2 metre topsoil spread on the top before seeded, so it should be non-pollutant material in there.
Peter?
Well, just on that point, I think it's very important that we make sure that when it's reinstated, that the quarry actually becomes a farming enterprise, because it's all very well to talk about leisure and all kind of good-sounding things, but in the end of the day, all the farmers around there have huge flocks of sheep and cattle, and if you make it into a leisure experience, then there will be dogs. We have the repeat of Vogrie, which has been very, very, very upsetting for an awful lot of the farmers around there. So I think we need to be very strict that the quarry, when it's reinstated, should be farming lands and nothing else. But I would like to also come back on another issue. Do you want to repeat on?
Chairman, just clarifying that point again. It's very informal paths. We're not talking about structures on the site, bins, benches, and that. It's just an informal rights of way through it in terms of the leisure use. So it's not going to result in some sort of visitors park or car park, any of that sort of activity to it.
Could I raise a much more important issue, and that is the road. When you turn off the A7 and you go towards the quarry, both the sand quarry and the old lime quarry works and the new quarry that has to be filled in, that road is totally inadequate because it tapers to a very small situation, and you could see, those that went on the tour yesterday, how the verges of that road had been really, really very much made into what Councillor one of the speakers called the mud bath. Now, we need to look at the 33. The figure was given that there would be 33 lorries movement, so in and out that would be 66. And if that was all, I wouldn't have a problem, provided that road could be widened. But when you as chairman of the planning committee, myself, and also a representative of planning and a representative of the road group met to really talk about the great worry that the farmers have that farm in that area. There are 3 quite significant farmers. The one that hosted it has produced a report as a result of that meeting, and it was said that if the St. James's Centre contract goes ahead, which I hope it will, because it will be wonderful for one of Midlothian's most important economic operators, who is the applicant, there would be 40 lorries a day, each doing 6 loads. Now, that's 240 lorries going in and 240 lorries coming out. That is a huge number of lorries. And then we have a 10-hour working day, which I think is far too long, because it will be quite a noise for all the people that live there, and I feel that 10 hours is too long. But if you had 10 hours, it would equate to 1 lorry either going in or coming out every 75 seconds. Every 75 seconds. Now, you know, to me, that road cannot possibly cope with that kind of density. you would also have lorries wanting to come in and going out, and there will be a great, they will stack up, and it will be very difficult for the whole thing to be worked out. And I'm really worried. We said earlier on we should have 100 lorries maximum a day, but how could you control that? So I would like to see that the officials would try and get a system going where we would be able to have a very significant amount of control on when it finally is being in operation, and that it would be supervised to a much greater extent than it is planned in this application.
I assume the community liaison group would monitor it. That's why we're setting it up. They would have a look at the number of trucks, presumably. Yes?
Yeah, but you were there when they said there would be 40 lorries a day, each doing 6 loads per day. You know, and I mean, just that is such an enormous figure.
Lisa?
Thanks, Convener. Just a brief question. At the bottom of page 107 of our report, 8.30, species protection. Clearly SNH are engaged in this matter, and that's quite comforting. But there is no reference to timelines for this, and my concern is there have been other episodes around Scotland where, when due to planning applications, badger sets have been identified and that's gone into the public domain, there have then been some serious vandalism of those badger sets where there wasn't very prompt response from SNH and appropriate measures in place to protect that set. The bats tend to survive rather better in these situations, but the badger set would be of concern. I just wanted to know, has SNH put any timelines around this, or will officers please have a mind to that and take that up with SNH? Thanks, Convener.
Yeah, Chairman, it's sort of covered as part of the environmental statement, operating procedures and condition 2, where obviously this has been looked at as part of the application, but as you rightly say, we don't identify during the site visit or other times where the badger set is, but the plan is to relocate that prior to infilling the operations. My understanding of badgers is that they'll often have multiple sets, so if you time it right and close up one set, they'll just naturally migrate to the other one or create another one elsewhere. So it's about getting the timing right, but the operator's more than aware of their responsibilities there, and to their credit, they did a good job in terms of protecting the hibernation sites in the other quarry that they filled in to enable the bats to keep going in and out. So it's hopefully in hand.
Sorry.
Peter?
I never received an answer to my query whether officers were able to install some control on the number of movements per day.
Yes, I struggle with this one, Chairman, to be honest, because it depends on the contracts, it depends on the business. The numbers will go up, they'll go down. I've made reference to average figures based on previous operating experiences from the applicant, but yeah, the numbers may go up and peak much higher than what I've said, but the reality is no one's going to be out on site counting the number of vehicles. I think it's the same with the quarry uses and the other uses, that the vehicle numbers do go up. If the committee wanted to put an almost arbitrary figure on, it would be difficult to enforce that. I think the key here is whether the council thinks the infrastructure is capable of tolerating that movement of vehicles. So that's I've got no simple answer for that, Chairman. I would just, as the report suggests, we're recommending approval based on what we know, which is the average numbers.
Peter, were you happy with that answer?
Well, no, I'm really not, because, I mean, if we really had ended up with 480 vehicles per day onto the quarry, I know they hope to do it all in a very short period, because to remove the whole of St. James's Centre is quite something, and huge contract, wonderful. But in the end of the day, what damage is it going to do to the operations of the 3 farming enterprises and to our roads?
Well, Peter, coming from St. James Centre, coming through the whole town of Edinburgh, it's going to take a lorry a long time. How many lorries do you think they own?
I think if you were putting a restriction or a limit on lorries and said there was only to be, I don't know, 25 per day, the lorry company or the truck company could just get bigger trucks with a bigger capacity, and so I don't think it would make any difference. I think anything written into a contract like that would have to be really flexible about tonnage and volume rather than truck movements.
Alec?
Chair, I'm speaking in support of the motion. This is a planning application. As far as I'm aware, the contract for demolishing St James's Centre and who gets the contract hasn't been issued yet. So really what's before us today is the planning application. But I think we should accept the planning application, put in, as the 3 local members for that area wanted, some monitoring group, and then they will be able to monitor what happens in the future and go ahead and make the decision.
Okay, Brian.
You also said that we're going to take the dockets from the site, so the tonnages and the weighbridge receipts will be logged within the system as well.
Chairman, I think we've heard quite a bit about this. Can I move that we grant consent subject to an adequate bond being put in place to keep members happy, to make sure there's assurances there, and ask the contractor applicant to set up a liaison group to help mitigate and to identify any worrying problems before that, and with that can I move consent with other recommendations that are in here.
Kath?
I would second Councillor Milligan's proposal.
Chair, don't want to intervene, but just to say, would you wish to, because Peter Armstrong highlighted, would you wish also to amend condition 16 as part of that, which would be to require that there is an on-site presence of a street cleaning vehicle during the course of operations?
That's part of the recommendation, so yeah, that's part of the recommendations. Okay, we're all of a like mind? Okay, thank you. Which then brings us on to item 9B, formation of a raised decking and installation of roof lights at 4 Mance Road, Roslin.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the formation of raised decking and installation of roof lights at 4 Mance Road, Roslin. This application was deferred from November 2015 committee meeting to enable a site visit to take place. A committee site visit took place yesterday, the 11th of January 2016. The proposed development comprised a raised timber deck, 8.1 metres wide by 4.1 metres deep at its deepest point. The deck is raised 1.45 metres above ground level and will be enclosed by a glass balustrade on 2 sides and a solid balustrade along the northeast edge of the deck. It is also proposed to erect a pyramid roof light on top of the existing flat roof side extension. Other works are also proposed at the property, however these are classed as permitted development and as such do not require planning permission from the local planning authority. The site is not in the Roslin Conservation Area, but is close proximity to it. The rear of the application site is 190 metres from the grounds of the Roslin Chapel, and as such the distance of separation is sufficient as not to affect its setting. A number of properties in Mance Road have rear extensions, decking, roof alterations and other garden structures, and as such the proposed development will not look out of place in this context. The inclusion of a solid balustrade along the northeast edge of the deck is designed to mitigate concerns over overlooking. There have been 21 representations, 14 objecting to the application and 7 supporting. The proposed development accords with the development plan, and as such the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions.
We're happy to accept recommendations? Yeah.
I just want to draw attention to 8.4 on page 118, where the council had made 3 requests of the applicant, and the applicant agreed to carry out 2 of the requests. The requests were in order to protect the privacy of neighbours. Could I propose that this committee ask the applicant to carry out the three requests which are set out in 8.4, and also on the recommendations on note 2 about the screen, that should be erected at the same time as the decking and not within 2 months.
As I understand it, it's a blank wall on the deck. And I know and he's talking about the height. He wants the height not as high, but the guy who's building the decking can't see into the next property. Russell.
Chairman, I'm prepared to move the application. In fact, I would have actually been moving it with an amendment to actually take away that screen, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just do it as per se. The screen's actually in the middle of the garden. If you care to actually have gone on the site visit, you would have seen that. And I can't for the life of me see what's wrong with it. There's an upstairs bedroom window anyway, which actually is nearer where this decking is going to go to the existing fence to the next door neighbour. So you could actually be upstairs and look out, but we're actually putting a screen up so you can't sit there on the decking. So I've got no problem whatsoever with it. It was continued for a site visit, question mark, but we had the site visit yesterday, and I'm quite happy to see the application going ahead.
Andrew, you want to say anything?
I stick by my original comments that the Council had requested 3 alterations, and on 8.4.
Chairman, just during the assessment of an application, plan officers often do try to accommodate and mediate amend schemes to withdraw objections in effect. Obviously, with regard to this situation, there was a number of alterations. The applicant took on board some, but not others, which was a choice of the applicant, so the planning authority has to make its judgment based on that. And I mean, to be fair to the applicant, what they're proposing to do is acceptable, hence the recommendation. So just because the planning officers asked, because it was trying to resolve a difference of opinion between parties, doesn't mean to say we should necessarily follow that through.
Joe?
I just want to second Councillor Embry.
Just to point out as well that the planning officers haven't made that third suggestion a condition, so you know it's not really relevant.
Anybody who's on the site visit, Andrew, could see that there's nothing wrong with this project at all, from overlooking the man's property. So. Now move on to item 10A, erection of new community facilities including primary school, library, health centre and alterations to existing leisure centre and associated works. Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of a new community facility at land at Lonehead Leisure Centre in King George's Field, King George's Avenue, Lonehead. The proposal comprises a new primary school, a nursery school, early years and after school care, external teaching areas, a library, a health centre, alterations to the existing leisure centre, resurfacing the existing Muga pitch, a community garden, extending the existing car park to 177 spaces, boundary fencing and landscaping, drop-off areas, new access arrangements off George Avenue, cycle parking facilities and the retention of the existing grass football pitch on King George Field. The new school, library and health centre will be replacement facilities for those currently off Mayburn Walk. The design of the building is contemporary and the uses contemporary materials and consists of 2 main components being conjoined to the existing leisure centre. The building varies in height, ranging from single-storey to 2-storey. The building, landscaping, open space and car parking are well laid out to provide a functional and attractive civic space. The significant scale of the building will form a landmark building in the area. However, despite its size, it has been positioned carefully as not to have a detrimental impact on any nearby residents. The development is within the built-up area of Lonehead and is compatible to its location. Redeveloping this existing community use site accords the development plan policies and is compatible with its location. There have been 2 representations received in relation to the application and consultation responses as outlined in the report. The recommendation is to grant planning permission.
It's an excellent proposal for Lonehead. Kelly?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to reiterate your comments there. I think it's a fantastic proposal from Lone Head, and I think it's really came from within the community as well, so I think this is really welcomed. I did note the objections and representations made, but I'm pleased to see condition 18 particularly that will look at other play areas to replace the ones that will be lost. I note that the only other objections was Paradise Parents Council, and that those objections have also been met as well. So I think this is a fantastic proposal coming forward. I'm really pleased and proud to see it. So I certainly move that we accept recommendations.
So there's recommendations from page 133. There's a lot of different matters to be attended to, but I take it we accept the recommendation. Right, you want to speak, Bob?
Just briefly, Chair, just to welcome yet another new school in Midlothian, and particularly to welcome the incorporation of the health centre as well in it, creating a lot of savings all round.
And a nursery as well, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, just likewise, I just want to welcome this. It's a fantastic resource for the local community in Lone Head.
It's been a long time coming, and if you remember, this council actually passed a motion for the replacement of Paradise School, because we decided that you can't actually keep on putting sticking plaster over the school. And if you remember, the roof leaks, etc., and all we were doing was actually spending money, and then another year later spending more money, and there comes a point where it's easier to actually say, stop doing that, let's have a real look at what we can do. And along, as Councillor Perry said, along with the local community who have worked tirelessly, particularly on the health centre side of things, to get things brought together, to get it integrated. And I tell you, if it does come off, or when it does come off, it will be a flagship hub in the primary sector. I just think that's fantastic. A wee bit to go yet, and also, there is, as has been mentioned already, there's a loss of a bit of land, so we're going to have to compensate somewhere along the line, and hopefully there's work going ahead there, Chairman, as we speak, to get that taken care of.
Which moves us on to item 10B. That was approved by the V10E.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application in principle for a residential development on the site of the Paradise Primary School, Lone Head Library, Doctor's Surgery and the Community Learning Centre at Mayburn Walk, Lone Head. The application includes an indicative layout plan which shows 86 house plots, the retention of the existing on-site Muga pitch, a children's play area, open space and landscaping, and an overspill car park for the nearby leisure centre. The site will be accessed via Mayburn Walk. The site is within the built-up area of Lone Head, where there is a presumption in favour of appropriate redevelopment in accordance with development plan policy. The proposal is a consequence of the council plans to redevelop the leisure centre site nearby, which has just been the subject of discussion and debate. As the application is in principle, the detailed design, layout and landscaping will be a consideration at a later stage, if the committee is minded to support the application. There have been 5 representations received in relation to the application, and the consultation responses are outlined in the report. The recommendation is to grant plan permission subject to developer contributions and conditions.
Russell?
No, seriously, Chairman, this is part of the overall development. I mean, and it comes surprising me, in actual fact, to think about a public consultation in an area that has been open for many, many years, to get 4 neutral and only 1 objection. I think is fantastic. So the community are going along with what's happening there. I think there's an excitement around that. It's now about delivering that excitement into actually a reality. So happy to welcome this, and if we get the planning permission, we can then, I'm sure, put it on the open market for a few pennies that will help to recondition the leisure centre.
Kelly?
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second that recommendations, and like has already been said, this it's not just been agreed by the community, but this kind of came from the community as well. I think it's fantastic for local community empowerment.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, really. 2.2, it says the cabin is to remain to the west of the site along with the community garden, which is to the northwest of the site fronting Mayburn Walk, whereas the map on page 156 suggests that it's just the building which is outside the area for development. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, the plan on page 156 is the application site, but yeah, the text is correct. It's just clarifying to members that the cabin is to remain. There's an indicative plan up on the wall which might be worth looking at the end, which maybe explains it better than I can, but it shows that.
I'll get my 2 bits in as well. Just along with Councillors Parry and Imrie, I just want to welcome this fantastic resource for the community in Lonehead.
I take it as recommended then. Okay, it moves us on to item 10C. Residential development at land adjacent to Charles Letts and Company, Salters Road, Dalkeith.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of 82 dwellings on land east of Charles Letts and Co Limited, Salters Road, Dalkeith. The proposed development consists of 60 two-storey dwellings comprising a mix of detached and semi-detached houses, a 3-storey block of 22 affordable housing flats, a new vehicular access of Salters Road, pedestrian links to the front and rear of the site, open space providing a kickabout area and play provision, landscaping and suds provision, boundary fencing including noise attenuation fencing on some boundaries, and car parking provision. The houses are of a contemporary design and will comprise a mix of concrete roof tiles and render walling. The site is within the settlement of Dalkeith and forms part of the Thornybank Industrial Estate. The site is allocated for business and general industrial use, and therefore in principle the proposed development is contrary to the current local plan. However, recent developments have taken place in close proximity to the site, which have introduced residential, retail and other uses in the vicinity of Thornybank Industrial Estate. The land also was acquired historically by Charles Letts to allow for future expansion of their business and manufacturing of paper products. However, the company has advised that market and technology changes mean that this is no longer a prospect for the company. Furthermore, the company also advised that the disposal of the land is required to provide much needed working capital to sustain the financial stability of Charles Letts' business. The site is identified for housing in the proposed Midlothian local plan, but this was in response to the initial application coming forward from the applicants. So the application came forward before it was identified in the local plan and was considered as a windfall site. That's why it's been looked at now rather than being identified as premature. The site is within the built-up area of Dalkeith and adjacent to residential developments. There is sufficient justification for the Council to grant planning permission for residential development on this site. The development itself is well laid out and provides distinct character areas and interesting spaces. There have been 11 representations received in relation to the application, and consultation responses are outlined in the report. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to developer contributions and conditions.
Margot?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not actually going to oppose this particular application. I mean, Charles Lett has been in that area for many years, and it is now the only industry that's operating there, sadly to say. Just one or two concerns that's not really been addressed to my satisfaction, which is the actual construction side of it, where you haven't got any details with regards to hours of operation, the actual route of the construction. And I know you're saying in the paperwork that you'll get written approval, etc. But myself as a local member, and as I may say a local resident, I would like to have seen that type of detail there so I can ensure that the residents in that area, when they ask me that question, I could have told them we'll only be operating at such and such an hour. But also you have to take on board the fact where it is, when it's near the school campus, and you'll have all the traffic from the campus. So I would hope that your hours of operation would obviously take that in cognizance. So I would have really liked to have, before this application came to us, that information had been included in the form.
Yeah, Chairman, I mean, there are conditions about the construction vehicles entering the site, and that's partly because of the conscious about the school traffic activity, but they'll effectively start at the Salters Road end. That's where they'll basically come into the site and start from there. So that will be where the construction vehicles go in, and that's the best place for them in terms of space, visibility, and getting into the site. Yeah, the hours of construction, I suppose it's, if you know the site itself, you know, nearby you've got some residential properties, but you've got other residential development taking place still at West of Cowden. You've got the neighbouring lets commercial activity taking place, so we haven't gone down that route, but obviously if there's a particular concern about hours, we can happily speak to the developer about the construction hours, but the standard house building hours are sort of 7 or 8 in the morning through to 6.
I would be quite upset if you actually came away with that type of times of operation. I think you'd really, as I say, take cognizance of the fact that it's a school route as well, and the amount of traffic that passes there daily, obviously during school term time, to have construction vehicles as well, and we don't know how many vehicles will be travelling that vehicle. And I know that is an issue with other applications that's been presented to us. It would be really helpful if that information had been provided.
Yeah, sorry, if I can maybe refer you to page 171, condition 5. This is where we're trying to control those hours of construction and the times when construction vehicles enter the site, and that's purposely for safety, but to make sure that we do look after the school's traffic. So we've got that control on there. Once we've got details come into us, quite happily come back to yourself and the other Dalkeith members to have a conversation about what hours they're proposing and whether we think they're acceptable or not. But that gives us the means to control that, and that's because of the school traffic.
That would be most helpful.
Okay.
Chairman, I'm also supporting the application, but I think the guidelines could be laid down, Peter, with the building that's went round about the high school already, with concerns when they were building the primary school when we took it off of Thornleybank Road. And there is issues that obviously you can speak with Jim Margo and myself, and if they're in place with the other building that's taken place, and what has already been built, then that would be acceptable.
Yeah, I'll take that away, Chairman. Yep.
Item 10D, erection of retail unit and associated works at land at Mayshade, Garden Centre, Esbank Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of a retail unit, formation of access and car park and associated works at land at Mayshade Garden Centre, Esbank Road, Bonnyrigg. The proposal comprises the demolition of the existing buildings on site, including the garden centre building, the builder's merchant storage building and walls, an existing cottage which is used as an office, and the erection of a single-storey flat roof retail unit. The retail unit will be positioned in the western corner of the site and will measure approximately 65 metres by 35 metres and will be 5.5 metres high, providing a gross floor space of 1,804 square metres, with 1,254 square metres of retail floor space. The building will have a rectangular footprint. The north, east and south east elevations of the proposed building will be largely finished with horizontal timber cladding and powder coated aluminium frame glazing. Other elevations will be finished with a white smooth render. A canopy area will identify the entrance to the retail unit. The flat roof is to be partially covered by solar panels. An entrance vehicular access will be via the existing access point onto Esbank Road. Pedestrian links will be provided to Esbank Road and to the A7. 120 car parking spaces will also be provided along with landscaping and boundary treatment. The site is located within the Greenbelt countryside and on the edge of the settlement, where there is a fundamental plan and objection to retail development. However, in this case, an unrestricted retail use was historically granted to the Mayshade Garden Centre, and as such, in planning terms, the proposal is seen as a redevelopment of an existing retail use. The report references that there have been 3 representations received in relation to the application and consultation responses as outlined in the report. For members' information, since drafting the report, a further objection has been received from a nearby retailer expressing concerns that the development is contrary to policy, with a detrimental impact on nearby town centres, and that too much weight has been placed on the certificate of lawful use. These issues have been considered in the report. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to developer contributions and conditions.
Thanks, Chair. There are two, I guess, groups of concerns about why I called this in and why I think it bears a bit of scrutiny from this committee. The first is to do with the impact that granting retail permission here would have on other town centres where consequently retail opportunities might not go to. And the second group of reasons is traffic. On the first issue about town centres, I mean, all of us round here have spoken before a number of times about how our wish is to have vibrant town centres with good retail opportunities, and we've seen progress on that recently. Things like Morrison's at Dalkeith is working quite well, and I'm sure that there's similar things elsewhere. I also understand that when there's a need for a big unit like Tesco's, that can't be in a town centre, but for mid-sized units like this, which I believe to be an Aldi, I think it does bear a bit of thought about whether that might better be denied out of town and rather encouraged into town where it could work better. There's a couple of issues around that. It's about also people without access to a car. So if you live in a community that now might not get a retail opportunity of this size and you don't have a car, it would be a shame to restrict that to people who can travel out of town. It also brings me on to my second concern, which is about car use. I think that having retail like this on a fairly accessible roundabout, but not in a town centre, I think there's a fairly clear indication that it encourages car use. I mean, it's 120 spaces. I don't think there's any serious thought that it's going to be the same level of traffic as was going to the garden centre. I mean, this is Aldi. They would have plans to promote, no doubt. They'd have plans to bring people there. You know, that's on a key roundabout where I think there's a danger that if the traffic backs up, it can snarl things all the way along S Bank Road and all the way along that A7 corridor as well. So I think that bears a little bit of scrutiny, and it'd be useful to hear some thoughts back. I suppose, just as an addendum to those things as well, it's just a fairly important application, I think, and other members might have other concerns as well, which is why I called it in, just to give us all a chance to give it a bit of scrutiny and hopefully hear some answers to those things in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I would say I agree 100% with Councillor Young's comments there. On the map, it does look as if it's well served by public transport, but the A7 there's no bus stop there at the moment, certainly, and it's not the kind of place people on the 29 route would go down to. The 49 route, we've seen ourselves that every half-hour service now is not that many. It's not really a walkable distance to the railway station with heavy bags of shopping. It's going to encourage people who really do use cars, and I do have concerns about that, particularly on the roundabout. If that roundabout is getting busier, it's an important roundabout for the bus services which do use it, because they go into Harden Green, which means they approach the roundabout twice. So, you know, if you slow down the traffic on that roundabout, you really do impact the buses more than you do anybody else. So I'm going to listen to the rest of the debate, but I strongly support the arguments which Councillor Young has just put forward.
Yeah, thanks. And firstly, I'd like to thank Kenny for calling it, and it gives us a chance to discuss it. It shows a wee bit of discrepancy there on who can call these missions in. I'll start on the transport, which is the one sort of majored on. I have serious problems and concerns about transport to this site. If you're coming from the Bunnerig area, you have maybe the 39, the 40, 49 buses that'll take you there, but there are very few other buses coming up the way that are the same. I have serious concerns that what you have is too two retailers, Aldi and Tesco on the other side of the roundabout, and you're going to have an awful lot of people walking back and forward for them if they're pedestrians, or even if they're travelled on a bus. They're not going to walk out to Aldi, jump on a bus to go into Tesco. They're going to try and cross that road. And I've already got concerns about the safety of pedestrians crossing that road. If you're going down for Bonnyrigg and you're going straight across towards the S-Bank roundabout to walk across there, you've got cars sweeping out of Bonnyrigg. If there's nothing coming from the right, they're not even slowing down and they're sweeping straight round as residents are trying to cross there. So I have serious concerns about anything that would increase the amount of residents trying to cross the busy, exceptionally wide A7. So I would have concerns with that. I also have concerns if you look at, for example, on quite a few occasions, for example at Christmas, where traffic already going to Tesco's is backing up onto that roundabout, and it's becoming exceptionally difficult to manoeuvre. In fact, one day during that period, cars were doing U-turns and coming back down to S-Bank roundabout and going up Dalhousie Road because the cars were backed up on that roundabout. I think anything that's going to add to that is going to impact on that. I'm also concerned with the level of car usage that will be going into Aldi, and it will be trying to turn right into there coming through the Dalkeith area, and how that might back up, and especially at times such as Christmas at peak exceptional busy times, where that could become an immense problem to that road and to the free flowing of traffic. I don't think there's been any proper thought there. To add to that, and I've no doubt in whatsoever, somebody for transportation might tell me that we've got to take this as an individual. We'll have the next application, which is at this moment in time being recommended for refusal, but at a later stage being recommended as one of your housing supply areas, H9, which is Brumenau, Galshire, the practice range. And what we're talking about is having two separate entrances altogether, and Aldi having an entrance, them having an entrance. Now, I know the traffic officers would prefer Viewbank or Viewfield as their entrance into there. However, quite clear for the local community, they see a traffic light exit as being something better. But what we're going to end up with, either way, is sort of three different, an entrance into the community hospital, an entrance into the Aldi, and an entrance, if that's granted consent at this time or at a later time, into Brumenau is there. I think that if we are going to do anything here at all, there should be at least a joined up thinking here with transportation, and make sure that if both these applications that are here today are granted consent, that there's a joint entrance and that there's some working done to help that there. I then moved to the sequential testing, and I actually found it ironic, absolutely laughable, that Tesco this morning sent me an email telling me the damage that out-of-town centres, shopping centres would do to Dalkeith. How absolutely ironic that Tesco emailed me to tell me that was going to do Dalkeith town centre a lot of harm. Unbelievable. Absolutely, genuinely, I think it's the best laugh I've had in a long time. However, embarrassingly, I tend to agree with them. I would actually welcome Aldi to Dalkeith, to Bonnyrigg, and I'm absolutely concerned that sequential testing, when I look at the way it's been done, in the report it talks about it's slanted towards Aldi's specific needs. In 3.4 they talk about the gross and floor space of rental unit is 1,800 altogether, 1,200 being for retail, along the floor space and storage areas. Sorry, I've grabbed the wrong bit. Sorry, but it does actually talk about in the report, sorry, on 8.9, is that being done heavily influenced by Aldi's specific operational requirements to the floor space in there. When you actually go through the report and you actually refer back to the policy, and policy in 7.12 and shop 5, there are no suitable alternative sites available within the edge or sufficient close form of effective extensions to strategic town centres referred to in shop 2. Chairman, can I draw your attention to this advert that's currently on the internet at the moment, in Bonnyrigg Town Centre, where you actually have for sale the disused co-op site which has 16,828 square feet of space available at this time. I would welcome Aldi. I would welcome Aldi to the town centres, because I think allowing them to go here would have a significant bearing on the town centres. I think Aldi's an up-and-coming along with Lidl. They're challenging the big retailers, and that can only be welcomed. I'm sorry, I'm not going to vote for this because it's in the wrong place. I think there has been far too much weight given to the certificate of lawful use. It was never envisaged that I can understand at any time at all that a garden centre would suddenly become a major retail outlet, and I don't think we've given enough consideration to that. Also, in discussions and questions to officers, when asking them what impact would this have on other retail units that were planned in the area, and told it could be reasonably significant. For example, there's identified need for a store on the A7 corridor up in the Gore Bridge areas and all that, and how would this impact on it? I think again it would. There isn't, as I say, reasonable pedestrian links to this. I didn't think the sequential testing has been done. I think this will have a major adverse impact, not only in Tesco's, and I have no problem whatsoever with any impact on Tesco's. As I say, they disappeared from town centres and left us, or the people of Dalkeith, with no retail unit at all. So I have no sympathy with them at all, and for them complaining about this. What I do have is, I look at, for example, we've seen an investment by Morrison's in Dalkeith, we've seen an investment by the cooperative in Bonnyrigg, and I think we should be valuing these. I've already raised concerns regarding the amount of restaurants and stuff like that that started popping up all over the countryside, with Elgin Hawk, up in the street, and you've now seen another one, and the damage that's likely to do to your town centres, drawing folk away from them. I think we either need to, in here, decide we're going to protect our town centres fully, or no, because if we grant this, I'm sorry, would be as well just ripping up the paper and saying the town centres are finished. I move that we refuse consent for the reasons given.
Thank you. I'll take a contrary view to my colleagues in this aspect. I think the paper deals with the traffic issues, as we have in the report. I don't think they've been over-exaggerated. There is pedestrian access. In fact, if there's going to be houses built right next to it, that's obviously clearly there is pedestrian access. There is local transport, public transport access to it. I think it's would be a valuable. Aldi would be a valuable addition to the Midlothian retail scene. We don't have one in Midlothian. To say that we'd love to get one here, there, everywhere, that's the company indicate that's not what. They will just invest elsewhere. There are 30 jobs in line up there. I think we'd be depriving our community of access to one of the discount stores which have been now proven so popular. And therefore I would move to accept the recommendations and grant this application.
Thank you, Chair. As a local resident and as a local member who suffered greatly when Tesco's left us to go to Harden Green, and having to explain to people it wasn't our fault, and the time and the years it's taken for this authority to get back the public trust and have Morrison's on our doorstep, another superstore that's greatly welcomed. But in the meantime, before that, obviously Fan Foods and Lidl's stepped up to the mark. They started selling things that our people were asking for, and we should be trying to protect those two premises as well. I mean, you're referring to 30 jobs in Aldi. What about the jobs that's already in these shops that may be affected? There may be an idea that it won't affect them, but that there's nothing to say that it won't affect them. There isn't an issue about access to it, because in previous times, I'm not a car user, owner, and I've had tried to walk when it was May Shade, and trying to cross that particular road is very dangerous. So I'd be quite concerned if there wasn't pedestrian crossings or anything put in place, if this did go ahead. I'm totally opposed to affecting the town centre. We've worked hard to get Morrison's there, and I think we should support the businesses already there.
Thank Thank you, Chair. I think the argument about the extra jobs is a bit spurious. It's interesting Tesco are objecting vehemently against this, and I would think that they would see that they would be making some of the staff maybe go part-time or even letting them go. I think that Derek makes some really good points about the town centres, about the old Scotmid building, which I know myself. I've actually written to the people who own the building asking if they could tidy it up a bit. I think if we had somebody like Aldi come into the town centre, then it would improve the outlook for the towns, certainly Bonnyrigg it would. I would therefore like to formally second Derek's proposal to reject this application.
I find it a wee bit curious that we're denying people a choice of places to shop when we all know if one retailer has that place tied up, then the prices aren't going to be low for the people. They need competition, just like we have in Dalkeith here. We allowed Morrison's to come in against Lidl's, and then Councillor Young's point that he started off by saying that you need a car to get there, and then complained that people would use a car to get there. And then Councillor Milligan says that cars were backing up against each other at Christmas time trying to get into Tesco's. Well, if there was another wholesaler, another retailer there, then they wouldn't be backing up. They'd be going in to Aldi's and using Aldi's as well. So I find all the arguments for against this application to be quite spurious, to be honest with you.
Right. I think Aldi is a revolution in retail, and I admire it fantastically. It gives all our customers in Midlothian a chance to buy things at a much lower price than they get anywhere else. What I also admire Aldi for is that they do use an awful lot of the produce from local farmers. They really are foremost supporters of Scottish farming. If you go to the Highland Show, they have a stand and all the different farmers are represented there. And it's quite impressive. However, there's one part of this proposal that I don't like. When Aldi had an open day during, I think it was much earlier last year, I went along, and there were quite a few of us that went that evening, and I met several of the people that used the old Mayshade garden centre not to buy plants, but to go and be in the cafe. And the cafe was enormously popular, and they were all really whining about the fact that they were going to lose the cafe. So I then heard that the Darling family were going to put up a cafe at the far end, which is now referred to as the grassed over area. When I then looked at item 3.9, it says, while the majority of the application site is proposed to accommodate some form of development, there is an area to the northeast end of the site which is proposed to be a grassed area. And the applicant states that there are no plans for development in this area and that it's going to be given over to soft landscaping. Now, I understand that to be totally incorrect, because the Darling family, because I was so intrigued that I suddenly found so many of the people not upset about losing the cafe, that I found out what they were planning, and they are planning a cafe there. So why is that suddenly being kicked into the long grass? And I feel that that should be reinstated. So if we go ahead with giving planning permission, I think it is quite important that 3.9 is being removed and that there is the scope to have a cafe, because the cafe really, it was amazing how many people there all whined that they would lose their cafe.
Chairman, I'll maybe just come in and try and address some of the points that have been raised. If I start with just trying to clarify a few things. The first one is yes, there's no cafe proposal here before you. There's not a cafe that's part of this scheme. It's not on the plan. There's no other planning application. There's no pre-application discussion about it. There's not part of this assessment. There's no cafe to be considered as part of this scheme. The second thing is just to be mindful and to be careful about using competitive competition in assessing a planning application. There's some valid planning issues that have been discussed and will, I'm sure, no doubt, be used to make the basis of a decision. But whether it's that retailer or a different retailer and whether it takes trade from this one or that one isn't really a material planning consideration. Just be mindful of that. Some of the big land, the sort of planning issues are, the first one is as initially raised, you know, the town centre first approach is a fundamental of planning. Retail in the town centre, you want them to be vibrant, you want to be busy, you want the vacant units to be taken up. That's enshrined in all the policy documents you see. And I think we've referenced that in the report. What we've got here, though, is we've actually got a retail unit. That's the bottom line. Whether we like it or not, that is a retail unit on that site. I know it was called the Mayshade Garden Centre, but dating back, it was given a loose permission, which meant it could change to an antique store, or a food store, or a furniture shop, because it's a retail unit. So in the report, the reasons we've got to recommend an approval to is that is the starting point, that is the basis for the recommendation. So we just remind you of that position. So even if you look to refuse this, tomorrow another retailer could drive up and start operating from the existing building. So that is a retail unit on the site, on the planning unit. If you take that on board, I suppose when you then look at the access arrangements, because it's the existing access point, that's maybe the logical point to have a revamped access. People are familiar to accessing a unit at that point. It's the furthest point away from the roundabout. It's most probably the safest point to have an access if you're going to have a unit or a development in that site. In terms of the other issues to do with transportation, I'll maybe ask Jim to come in and discuss those as well. But one thing I would just remind members of is that the neighbouring site, which I know is subject to the following application, the land adjacent to this site there's a gas main that runs through there. So if you're talking about joined up access, it makes it difficult to have development on that section of the site because there's a gas main that runs under it. And the proposed housing scheme next door is actually putting that as open space because they can't build on it because it's got a gas main there. So yeah, in an ideal world, we initially discussed with both operators, both applicants about joined up access arrangements, but there's a constraint there. In terms of the land use planning issues, that's all I was going to say for now, but I don't know whether Jim wanted to come in on some of the transportation issues.
Thank you. Just some points on the public transport and the walking access to it. It is on a bus route, and there are two existing bus stops almost outside the frontage of it, and they're linked by a pedestrian crossing, so you can get on and off and cross the road there. Walking from the Bonnyrigg side is existing footpaths, and that's fine, but there is an issue getting across the A7 that's well been recognised. To get over the A7 at present, you would have to leave the site, cross the road, and then go down past Community Hospital, past the bus turning circle onto the cycle path, use the bridge to cross the A7, go to K&I Coachworks, and then walk back towards Tesco's, which is a doable route, but it's not ideal. That's one of the reasons why the council has the A7 Environmental Improvement Scheme in its local plan, and this developer has been asked to contribute towards it. And that scheme involves footpath links on the A7, bus stops and crossing points. It's quite a big scheme, quite an expensive scheme, and it covers the A7 from Harden Green roundabout up to Tesco's roundabout, to the next roundabout and over the bridge. It would take some time to get that scheme into fully functioning, but it's certainly something we're working towards. So at some point in the future there would be two bus stops on the A7 and a crossing point between them in the vicinity of the Mayshade Garden Centre site. It wouldn't be fully funded by this developer, but he would contribute towards it. And I believe that all the other housing developers on the A7 corridor would be also contributing towards this scheme as part of a planning requirement.
Thank you, Convener. I was quite disappointed that having met at a fairly early stage with the applicants and their agents and obtained from them assurances that they would have a meaningful discussion with the local community, albeit that the fact that they did not feel this was necessary was disappointing in itself, but the fact that they agreed to it and then the manner in which it was conducted caused a number of local residents to attend my surgery and complain very vigorously about the nature of that discussion that the applicants had with the local community. And I think I brought that to the attention of this committee on a previous occasion. Having said that, I share other members' concerns about the traffic impacts and implications of this development, because it is, in fact, although an existing retail resource, it is, in fact, a development in no uncertain terms. And from that, we can expect an increase, I think it is a reasonable guess to expect an increase in the amount of traffic, given that it's quite a different product. And I'm a great admirer of the Aldi product and of the modus operandi of the way in which this company has operated for a very long time. Having said that, I did find the attitude of the planning agents in particular to be very disappointing. And given that it seems to me it's quite irresistible to in any way obstruct this application, it seems to me more appropriate that we condition it in such a way that we mitigate some of the negative impacts. I was even more disappointed that in spite of comments, not just from myself, but I happen to know that other members and officers advocated to the applicants that they might consider other sites and identified any number of different areas where we have significant housing development taking place, where they could very effectively conduct their business, make a very good profit, and simultaneously serve the needs of our local communities, whether that be in Bonnyrigg, Mayfield. There are any number of opportunities, and as already one of my colleagues has alluded to, there's a lot of development going on to the south of the county towards Gorebridge. The applicants were clearly not minded to consider any such advice, which, as I say, is even more disappointing. But in all of this, it seems quite likely that this application, if refused by this committee, would succeed on appeal. And so I am minded to support the application with conditions, and I would be very grateful if the applicants, if they are successful today, would take very seriously my request that they do consult with local residents, and since it sits at the cusp of both wards, it might be useful to have a really meaningful and sincere event to discuss with local residents about the percentage for art. When the government's planning policy was very clearly to embrace a percentage for art, it wasn't meant to be a tokenistic gesture. It was put in place in order that we could have a proper community characterisation in our developments, and that has often been ignored. In some cases not. In some cases we've had some really significant and community enhancing contributions to art, and they varied very considerably. And I would be very grateful to the developers if they would take this very sincerely as a request that they do consult with the local community before going forward with that requirement for percentage for art, and what shape or form it might be considered. They could do a lot worse than consult with some of the children at the local schools, and might find some very refreshing and useful information coming from that direction. But having said all of that, I do not find it a reasonable situation to refuse this application, even though I have the most sincere concerns about the traffic impacts in particular, and I'd like to go on record as having made that comment. And I would hope that the applicants will work very closely with our planning officers to mitigate the potential negative consequences. And again, as a company, I would hope they take on board the comments that have already been made and with regard to the fact that our planning officers have a great deal of knowledge, intimate knowledge of our county and where best any retailer might locate in order to be most effective both to the community and in their interests of their own profit margins. It's disappointing that advice from our planning officers has not been taken on board by these applicants, but I think I've said enough on the subject.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. I mean, this Mayshade's been there, I think, since 1981 as a retail unit. So obviously they got planning permission for set up a retail unit. Now what's happened is they've either finished up, retired, I don't know what's happened, and they decided to put the retail site on the market. And Aldi's are either purchased it or in the process of purchasing it. And I don't think there's grounds to refuse a retail site, or which is already a retail site. And I've heard some of the reasons why it shouldn't happen. I differ from Margaret. I don't think it will have any effect in Dalkeith town centre whatsoever. If Morrison's has got one weakness, and we've discussed it with Morrison's for a long time, is that they've not got a petrol station. And you have to either go outside Dalkeith. I live at Danderong, I tend to go to Morrison's at Gilman, because it's nearer, and I don't need to go around Sheriff or Roundabout, which is a nightmare. But just down the road for Morrison's at Gilman, Aldi's have built a new unit, and it's had no effect, because I know people that work in Morrison's. It's had no effect on Morrison's trade whatsoever, and I didn't think this would have any effect. And I'm like Derek and the rest of them. When I got that email for Tesco's, I says, oh my God, they left Dalkeith in the lurch with farm foods. In fact, you had to get a bus to go and get a pint of milk. So I didn't see any grounds for refusing this application, Chair.
Yeah, right. I did come here with an open mind and try to think, because I had no sort of preconceived thing, but I think in listening to all the arguments that have come forward here, and as somebody who actually has stood on trying to regenerate the town centre of Pennycook, I then begin to think to myself, would I be a wee bit hypocritical here if I was agreeing to something that might affect some of the other towns within Midlothian? And I really believe we need to do all we can to regenerate our town centres. And just looking at Pennycook, and I'm sure you know, hopefully Adam agree with me, that Lidl sits in the town centre of Pennycook and is a very busy shop, and is probably one of our busier shops now. And I say it's certainly one of the busier of the big supermarkets, I would say, in the town. And I think that does bring a lot into the town. So, on having listened to everything, I'm sort of swaying towards, I think going against granting this application, I think I would have to say, and if I really was honest with that.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to make the point that was made by the planners, is that as a retail unit, and if it's not Aldi that goes there, it will be something else that goes there. I mean, what if it's an even bigger company? And I just think the points that we've made are valid and correct, and I think we would be better minded to put in kind of restrictions and exceptions as to what we do around the travel. You know, does there need to be an extra pedestrian crossing for the local community around there? There's a lot of houses down there that I think would benefit, and I've certainly seen in terms of the feedback from residents round about are particularly keen to see Aldi move in there. So just the last point about it is a retail unit, it is empty, and therefore I'd be minded to approve it.
I wasn't going to speak, but seeing as Derek mentioned my name, I better come in, I think so. I mean, it's mentioned the Lidls in Pennycook, and it's a perfect example to me of how the traffic problems can be good or bad. I mean, we've got 3 pedestrian crossings and a roundabout within a space of about 50 yards or metres, and it does seem to work. So I'm not too concerned about the traffic issues here. I don't think that's a major issue. I agree with Derek, and well, both Dereks if you want, its impact it would have in the town centres. And I think there would be a drift for the centre of Bonnyrigg down to here. I don't think there'd be any question of that in terms of shopping, and I think it would have a major effect in the town centres. Like Joe and Derek, we're in the Bids group up in Pennycook, and we've been trying to get businesses into the centre of the town, or what's classed as the centre of the town, although it's not really the centre in terms geographically. And if this was coming, an application that was coming in up, as I say, in my own area, and I'm only looking at it in relation to the Bonnyrigg side of things, I would be concerned about the effect it would have in the centre of the town. And I'm certainly, I'll certainly be voting against this as well. So.
Thanks, Chair. I was just to come back in reference to Provost Wallace's point, not to be argumentative, but just because he's right. I did mention as a concern or a potential concern cars in two different ways, but actually I think it's quite important because having listened to the advice we were given and also looked through the sequential approach to where we want to see retail located, the car thing actually gets to the nub of it, because on the one hand, if we don't promote town centre shopping and do promote retail on this scale outside of our town centres, we do promote car use because that's the only way to get there realistically. But on the other side of that coin, and my fear is that we get the worst of both worlds, because the people that you leave out from being able to access that kind of retail opportunity are those who don't have cars. So on the one hand you get more traffic, but you leave behind groups that are disproportionately likely not to have access to a car. So people who are perhaps elderly or people who are on low incomes. So if we don't do everything we can to promote town centre shopping, the point I was making is that you do get the worst of both worlds in relation to cars. And I don't think, from really what we've all said over the years and today, that's what people want, and that was my concern.
Well, I'll be open and honest about it. I'm very nervous about what the committee may or not do. If this was an application that was coming in with no retail permission whatsoever, I think it would be very easy to have the debate that we're having. However, it's not. Just look at 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8 and 4.9. All there that says, and the planning officer has already said quite clearly, it actually is a retail unit at the moment, and if you refuse this particular application, if they don't go to appeal, and that's another story, somebody else could come in and start operating whatever within the retail class use tomorrow. And the difficulty that I have is we're not actually talking about a piece of land that's there that's asking for permission to be retail use. And it's not about town centre versus this site. It's actually about making the best use of what already has its planning permission. Now, if we don't like the design, we can say we don't like the design and ask them to go back, etc. I don't agree on the difficulties on transport. Like Councillor Montgomery, I'm very much into people find their own level on transport, and with all the measures we've done over the years, people find their own level. The difficulty I have, and the nervousness, I suppose, is having sat there in 1997, may I hasten to add, is an actual fact that it has that permission. And the committee at that time, and I know it's a different complexity and a make-up of the committee today, but at that time obviously accepted that you would have that use, and that use was acceptable in that area. And the difficulty is that if we refuse this, it doesn't take away that retail use. And that's the dilemma, I think. I can't second guess what the planners had to look at, but they clearly had to look on the basis of what permission is existing there and had to take it on that basis. And I have to say that, coming down on one side or the other, I have to say that I think discretion being the better part of value, I'll actually be supporting the application, because if we don't, then we're actually haven't moved anything forward, because we're not taking away retail use. It's existing and it's there.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it is in a retail unit. We've given here, we're getting here a chance to get a retailer, which everyone on both sides of the argument have said would be valuable in Midlothian. We're talking about town centres. It's not a million miles from Bonnyrigg Town Centre or from Dalkeith Town Centre. We talked about people going into Gilmerton to the new Aldi, and other people doing their shopping out with Midlothian for Sheriff Hall roundabout reasons. But this will bring people to Midlothian. Aldi, the nearest one, other ones, I think there's one in Musselburgh, but and people have gone there. I've met constituents in Musselburgh, the Aldi there. I know many of my constituents have asked me, when is it going to open? And I said, well, it's coming up for planning. And so I know it would be popular. I'm very heartened to hear over here about the transport improvement on that roundabout, because just yesterday I was talking to a constituent which had walked from Bonnyrigg to Dalkeith, and of course had great difficulty. This improvement round that roundabout and pedestrian access and pedestrian, I think, is to be valued, and more people will be able to walk to the shop if they wish to. Therefore, I would repeat my thing that this, I propose this should be accepted.
Yeah, Chairman, I'm going to finish on this. Quite interesting, the transportation officer talks about the safe route to walk, and that's to come out of this new proposed development, walk over down by the community hospital, over the bridge, and then out onto a road with no pavement that services all the deliveries, all the buses into that area. No pavement to walk on, that's the safe route that's now recommended by your transportation people. And I'll keep you all in mind of that. When you come out of K&I's, you go straight onto a road that doesn't have a pavement, and it's all bushes along. You can't actually even get up onto the car park. You're left stuck on a main road, or you can walk down the road where the big delivery lorries and buses go. That seems to be our safe road. I think what we've had now is a clear indication for transportation that the road isn't safe to cross, it isn't what we want, and in the future, as time goes on, and the long play hangs, we're actually going to make some improvements to make it better, and I look forward to that coming along. But I think it's answered my question, that is there a decent pedestrian safety issue there to be concerned with? I think all members should be. I think quite categorically in the sequential testing, and I heard Alex saying he doesn't think it will be a danger or cause any problems to Dalkeith. The fact that, for example, the 29s and 39 buses come straight to that area, so if you're going for Gorebridge, Newton Grange, instead of having to go all the way up, round by Mayfield, down by Woodburn to get dropped off in Dalkeith, you can come straight there and you'll get dropped off on a bus right outside Tesco or Aldi. I'm sure it will have an absolute detrimental effect. It will also have a detrimental effect on the town centre of Bonnyrigg. No buts about it. There's a sequential test to be done there. As I say to you, there's a site currently for sale in Bonnyrigg where 16,828 square metres has been lying there derelict for about the last 5 years. It has a charity shop working in part of it at the moment. So there is a site in the town centre. The argument, quite simply, that it already has retail use, I'm sorry, there's far too much weight being put to that. The planners themselves, I think, will acknowledge that that only has a weight. This is a completely different retail use, and it would be open to elected members to actually say this isn't a retail use. Yes, Russell, yes it would. In terms of planning and planning argument, that's something that can be argued in a sequential testing can be applied there. And quite frankly, I would ask members to consider this. If you vote for this today, rip up the paper that says you're supporting town centres. Because this effectively, and keep in mind there's already another application next to Tesco pending. We've heard from Councillor DeVink that the applicant's actually got plans for a cafe in here now too. So if that then goes ahead at a later stage, that's your quash. That's S-Bank and Bonnyrigg linked. Let's make naked on with that, because all you've got is the A7 separating them. That's the coalitions is over if that goes ahead. Now, that looks like we've not been dealt about this because it would raise even further concerns. So I would ask members to think really hard on this. When you're talking about your own town centres and when you're demanding protection for your own town centres, that goes for everybody. That goes for the chance for the folk for Gorebridge and Newton Grange to get a superstore in their area which is identified as needed, and it goes for the investment by people like Morrison's and the Co-op in the town centres of Bonnyrigg and Dalkeith. And I would ask members to vote the way they think's best to keep your town centres vibrant.
while it may seem to people that Gorebridge is a wee bit away from this, there's no question that the granting of the application here would have a significant effect on the chances of having a substantial sized store in the Gorebridge or surrounding areas. So I think there's no question of that, and I think it has definitely got an effect in other town centres, Bonnyrigg and Dalkeith in particular. I agree, everybody wants an Aldi. I agree that I want competition, but I want it to be in the right location, and that's what our job is. I think, I think we've mentioned the sequential testing. I think those of us who think that this is the wrong location think that for legitimate planning reasons, and I think it's right for us to oppose that, even though there are some that will say that and we don't know what's going to come in the future, what planning application is going to be made. If they didn't get it, another retailer may put a planning application in. Fine, we'll judge that on its merits as well. We're not prejudging it, we'll judge that one on its merits as well. That's no reason for us not refusing this today, and I'll certainly be voting to refuse it.
And second is, I would like to make a comment. If Aldi, and don't forget, I'm for town centres as well, always have been, but if Aldi have a knowledge of that unit in Bonnyrigg High Street, compare it to Mayshade, they don't want to go to Bonnyrigg, they want to go to Mayshade. That's a commercial decision that we have no influence on, and Wishin ain't going to make it so. Can I have the proposer and the seconder for the Aldi store? So it's Bob and Lisa. And the proposer and seconder for the amendment is Ian, it's the seconder, and Derek's.
Derek proposed.
Yeah, Derek's proposing, that's what I mean, yeah. Okay, we'll vote first for the proposal. Okay?
Right, so that's the motion.
The motion, yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And those against?
Right. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
9, 8. Okay. I will vote for it.
No.
It's 9-8.
9-8 was the vote.
We'll now move on to the last item, which is 10E. Gentlemen, ladies, residential development at land southwest of Mayshade Garden Centre, S Bank.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the erection of 56 dwellings on land to the southwest of Mayshade Garden Centre, S Bank Road, Bonnyrigg. The proposed development consists of 42 two-storey private cell detached dwellings, 14 affordable housing units comprising 6 terraced houses and 8 flats in 2 blocks of 4, vehicle and pedestrian access onto S Bank Road, open space providing a kickabout area, landscaping and suds provision, and car parking provision. The houses are of contemporary design and will comprise a mix of concrete roof tiles, a reconstituted stone and dry dash render walling. The proposed access is via a traffic controlled junction onto S Bank Road, opposite the access into the community hospital. This 4-way set of traffic lights will introduce delays to traffic flows, which in turn could impact on local road safety. The site is on the practice ground of the Bruminaw Golf Club, which currently is in the Greenbelt and is designated as countryside, and at present there is a presumption against residential development. This land allocation is subject to review as the application site is identified for housing in the proposed Midlothian Local Development Plan, and as such will be subject to local plan examination later in the year. This position does not provide sufficient weight to justify overruling the current adopted local plan position. This is reinforced by the fact that the council has an effective housing land supply, and that there have been 236 comments made in relation to the site's inclusion in the proposed plan. For reasons of fairness and to give due respect to those who have made comment to this site through that process, the site will be considered as part of the local plan examination later in the year. In terms of the application before you today, there have been 89 representations received in relation to the application, including a petition with 19 signatures and consultation responses outlined in the report. The recommendation is to refuse planning permission for the reasons outlined in the report, which identify the proposed development as being contrary to policy in terms of the current adopted local plan, and insofar as it was premature in terms of the local plan process. It also reasons with regard to traffic and access concerns and outstanding design issues.
We already discussed the premature application and the reasons for it. Derek?
Chairman, given the last decision, this sort of makes this a lot easier for me to decide. I have a couple of questions, and I'll be as blunt as this. I'll be voting in favour of this application, having read it, having seen the last the reporters unit agreeing consent, and one of the previous applications, a site that isn't identified in the Midlothian Local Development Plan, being granted consent. This has been on the go for a long time, an awful long time, and coming forward. I'm kind of baffled by some of the comments, but I'll just go through them. I'm not going to bother asking the questions because I'll get the professional answer. I absolutely dismiss completely the transportation issues that we have here. I just absolutely think it's nonsense. When you talk about this shunt situation where it would make this more dangerous, if you look at the moment, you've got a Pelican crossing. Again, that's dismissed by the transportation guys at the moment, but in reality is you've got a bus stop that's sat there, and that route serviced with 3 buses for Bother going down the way, the 39, 40 and 49, and at times the two or 3 of them can arrive before they were cut at the one time at these stops, and you can have them sat there for a lengthy period of time, certainly a lot longer than what I would think you would have red lights there with a light controlled section. Also you have a right turn into the community hospital which adds to that, and having travelled that route all the time, it's regular where you come round that corner and there are queue and traffic there, and people are used to that. So I don't think this will impact. What I will say is that I'm going to move grant consent to this with the conditions here, but one of the conditions being that it is a designed entrance off the S Bank Road, and that entrance isn't taken in via Viewbank, Viewfield area, and that be a condition. It talks about other issues, for example, that it's in the green belt and it wouldn't have it doesn't contribute to leisure, etc. The reality here is, and I take for example, if you look at up in Rosewell at St Joseph's, where we allowed a large grouping of houses to contribute towards the upkeep of a Whitehall house, for example. And this area here, what they're talking about is a sale of land to contribute towards the continuation of a golf club, a famous golf club that's been there for hundreds of years, and I think this would secure their future. So I think the reality there is that we can justify this in the green belt. The agricultural land argument, I think really is a nonsense. And I know it's premature to the fact that the local development plan is still to be argued back and forward. It's never been agricultural land, and it's never likely to ever be agricultural land. For over 100 years it's been part of Broomlow Golf Club, so it's never going to be agricultural land in any way at all. I can see no reasons whatsoever in this paper here today, and being as what we've seen with, as I say, with the reporter's findings with one area just round the corner on Lastwade Road, and with the application in the Salters area that isn't in the local development plan. This is a small development in comparison to a lot of the developments that's been asked for. I'm going to move that we grant consent subject to conditions and subject to make sure that that the road entrance doesn't come in off a Viewbank Viewfield.
Russell?
Yeah, Chairman, I'm supporting the application as well, and this is the dilemma, as I was saying earlier on, that we're in. This application, according to the last report there regarding the site next door, under 410 it talks about, you know, that the housing site HS9 in Broomy has been is allocated in the forthcoming local plan, but it's premature now and therefore recommended for refusal. The difficulty I have is we say today it's recommended for refusal because it's premature, although we've actually been the ones that have actually put HS9 in the local plan, or the draft local plan in the first place. And the planning manager's saying, well, of course there's objections, but if I actually draw the members' attention to page 74 of the reporter's report, 33, where it says, while the council therefore supports the principle of development, and that's on the Lastway Road site, it considers the application premature since there are representations against the allocation of the land. Now, the difficulty I have there is a reporter is saying, yes, I've taken that into consideration. I know that there's representation, and Councillor Beattie actually asked that question earlier on today about the what-if scenario. That reporter has taken the decision against the background that there were representations made on that particular site, more than likely against it being included. And the dilemma that I have is by not including it, by not making a decision on it, and saying, no, it's not recommended, so it's recommended for refusal because it's premature, we end up in a heck of a situation, and it's like looking one way but actually going the other way. And I also draw the attention to the committee when the Letts site came up, which the planning manager alluded to was actually by having the housing development coming in, the money that could be taken from that housing development could be put into the Letts ongoing financial concerns that they had, and therefore it would sustain that particular industry. We have had email after email after email saying the golf club could be sustained if it gets planning permission for housing. I don't actually see what the argument or the difference in the argument between helping an industrial unit or in consideration that employment and keeping a golf club open and sustaining that. And I just can't see the difference in that argument. So therefore, I'm quite happy if Councillor Milligan's moving the application, I'm quite happy to second the application for all those reasons.
Yes, I would like to speak in support of this application as well. It's been a long-going issue over the previous local plan. This new local plan is coming out. I don't really understand the difference between the premature and impremature business of it. The development will fit in well there. I'm particularly pleased to see the pedestrian access at the back of it to the rest of Bonnyrigg has been put in, and to enable it to link people be able to, from that, will be able to walk into Bonnyrigg. They won't have to go out this exit. I agree with Councillor Milligan's concerns over the access onto the road, and I'm sure these problems will be addressed. And therefore, I'd like to cut a long meaning short. I shall not talk any longer. I shall just say support it.
I'm quite pleased that you don't know what premature means. Right, Adam.
I'll not say anything on that. No. I mean, I'll be supporting this as well. When the first email started coming in from the golf club, I actually went out to see the building because that was one of the concerns I had. And there's absolutely no question it's really needing a refurbishment or a brand new build. It's a bit of a mix and match. It's all been built at different times, and it's really it's past its sell-by date by quite a long way. In terms of a lot of the other arguments, it's already been made with my colleagues here. And, you know, my remit in the Labour group is, well, shadow sport and leisure for whatever that's going to be worth, which was the reason I went out to see the place. But I think if we are going to agree to this, I think the access would have to be off of the Bonnyrigg Road or West Bank Road. And I think a controlled junction in conjunction, if you would, with the hospital would be the right way to do it. And at the end of it, I suppose, you know, in terms of travelling for shopping and all the rest of it, you know, if this is actually permission given, they'll go and shop at Aldi's next door, you know, so.
Lisa.
Thanks, Convener. I'm afraid I'm minded quite otherwise to my colleagues who've spoken so far, and it does actually sit in my ward. It's rather strange that it does, but it does. And I am very concerned at the amount of greenbelt that we've seen disappearing within my ward over recent times, quite dramatically in a very short time. I have many concerns about this application. Most of them are covered in the recommendations by the officers, and I would propose to refuse this application.
I don't know if we need to wait till Kelly comes back or not. I think we're better if you just.
She has left, Chair.
Well, she can't vote then. Well,
if there's a division here, I don't intend to vote either because I left the meeting for a period when not.
Okay.
She's not here. She's not here.
Right, you'll need a seconder, Lisa, first. Lisa? You seconding it? And it's Derek, seconded by Russell, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so Lisa's the amendment, Derek's the...
Yep. Motion.
Okay, for the amendment then, Lisa, how many people support you? Against it?
Amendment is 2.
And those for?
For the motion. Right, 1.
Well, thank you all for your patience, and it's been a long meeting, and thanks.
Chairman, sorry, can I just ask for sorry, is that subject to the standard conditions you would expect with a housing scheme and developer contributions and securing affordable housing?
Of course.
And the access of.
And the access of Espermont. Yeah, access.
Yeah, Chairman, could I just ask members that are on the Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee, we've asked them to reschedule today's meeting to next Tuesday to the cancelled slot at 11 o'clock in the morning, and because it's likely to take some time, I hope members are okay with that.